Okay, there we go. So welcome everyone. This is the November meeting for the Peer Learning Network for the Forest Business Alliance. And before we start, I just want to give and share. My name is Kathleen. I'm the facilitator for the call today, and Jim Adrians is also here as a co-host. And before we get started, I want to just share briefly an overview of the Alliance of Peer Learning Network and sort of the goals of what this is about. So let me just share my screen here. Can you all see the Forest Business Alliance Peer Learning?
Yes.
Is that what
Uh,
you're getting?
it's not, doesn't fit quite right. There it is. Now we can see it.
Is that better? Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. So this learning network, and I'll just read it for the recording as well. Thanks, Peter. Connects forest-related businesses and organizations throughout California with an emphasis on peer-based sharing of expertise. The network's goals are to promote community learning and knowledge exchange in the forest business realm, select learning topics based on priorities of participants in the learning network, share tools, best practices, and lessons from successfully running forest businesses, and strengthen organizational, community, and regional business capacity. And just a note to, as a reminder, this Forest Business Alliance is currently funded by Cal Fire's Business and Workforce Development Grant Program. So with that, I really want to just emphasize specifically that this is, peer-to-peer learning and expertise sharing. And that's why all of you who are here participating in this and in the conversations, you're the heart and soul of this. And it is based on priorities that group members have. And so that's how we're going to kind of direct all the meetings in the future, all of them in general. I will say too, before we move on, we have worked on a draft charter for the organization for anyone who likes to do that type of work. We'll be asking for input from everyone who would like to look at that and be a part of that, see if there's anything missing, anything that you'd like to add. And so as a way to have something you can start to work with, we've drafted a draft, and that'll probably be shared in December. So let me stop this. Any questions before we kind of move on to the agenda and what's next? Okay. If you're muted, you just have to unmute to share that. So, and I'll share briefly then the agenda that we had for today. And then again, just make sure you can, there we go. How is it that? Does that come through?
There it is.
Okay, great. So just a brief overview we wanted to do. Um, we'd like to hear intros. We had planned about 30 minutes for this because of the 10 people registered. If that takes less time, that's fine. And kind of, again, like I just said briefly before we started the recording, kind of where your focus is right now, what you're looking to receive some support around, or what's new and exciting in your business and world, and if there's any insights that you can share, either that you're learning about or that you've heard others ask for support on. And then breakout rooms as an option, or we can stay in one group and kind of capture some of this back and forth support for peer learning and challenges and where people might need resources and extra support, and then a report back. So that's kind of what it looked like today. And since there's a small group, I propose and we just kind of stay in one room. And really what we can do, and I will take notes on this, is really hear from you. And I think Jeff and Peter and Chris, if you have anything to add to any of that too, um, we'd invite you to have like a deeper introduction of who you are, what your business is, and what you're working on, what you're focused on, and kind of what are some key issues that you're facing right now, whether they're challenges or growth opportunities or whatever feels most present and relevant. And we'll capture the notes. And then if there's anything that you'd like to share that feels compelling or new, that's just recently kind of come into your focus, or if there's a place that you're stuck or curious more about for more information, sharing that as well. One of the requests that we got from on the last survey, which we really appreciate people taking the time to respond to the surveys, was asking for a deeper, longer introduction from the group members so that they could really get to know people a little bit better, where they're located, what their challenges are in that area, what they're focused on specifically in their own business. And so we wanted to provide more time for that kind of networking and getting to know people better on these calls since you're here together in that time. Is there anything, Jim, that you'd like to add that I missed?
No, that sounds pretty perfect.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions about any of this or anything you'd like to add or anything else that you would like to see or have happen on this call today? Okay.
Peter says nope.
Peter. So, Peter, are you in a place that you'll be able to talk and engage at this point? Or are you chat only? Okay. Great. Thank you. So, Jeff, do you want to start or does that sound a good place for you?
Sure. I'm really just kind of here to listen and learn, but I'll give you my elevator pitch and let you know where I'm at. So I'm Jeff Grief. I live in Plumas County, which is in the Northern Sierras, and went through the Dixie Fire here. I work with the local Fire Safe Council and the local Underburn Cooperative. And through their efforts, my house was saved from the Dixie Fire, as I explained earlier. So anyway, after the Dixie Fire, we were all looking for solutions. Of course, you know, we're all looking for solutions to the fires. And one of the big problems, of course, is biomass. And so I, through my own research, came across this idea that forest biomass can be converted into wood fiber potting substrate for the horticultural industry as a substitute for peat moss. Okay. So briefly, the horticultural industry, first of all, uses millions of tons of potting substrate. There are thousands of acres of potted plants in Southern California and in other parts of California in all these nurseries and in greenhouses where they're growing ornamental plants and growing vegetables and berries and fruits and stuff. So the potting substrate industry is huge, is very large, but the mainstay of it, which is peat moss, is now being severely impacted by climate change. So and actually this year up in Canada, they had the worst peat moss harvest ever. Their peat moss production was down 40 or 50%, is what I'm told. This is a severe blow to the horticultural industry because they have relied on peat moss. Peat moss is an ideal potting medium. They need substitutes. For 2 decades now in Europe, wood fiber has been put forward as a substitute or supplement for peat moss, and it works well. So wood fiber has turned out to be one of the best solutions to this problem that the horticultural industry has. And they're producing it in Europe. I just got back from Holland, where I was looking at the machinery and mixing operations that they have there. And the technology is well worked out. A certain amount of wood fiber is being produced here in the United States. There's one large company back east that's producing it in North Carolina, but it's not being produced here in Western forests. Or I think there are 1 or 2 small operations, but nothing of any significant size. So we've got all this biomass. They need tons and tons and tons of substitute for peat moss. It's, you know, it's logical. It makes sense. So that's what I'm trying to do, is to get an operation going to produce this wood fiber substrate as a substitute for peat moss to sell to the horticultural industry. So where I'm at with it now is that I am looking for funding to get going. I have applied to CAL FIRE for funding for a feasibility study. And right now I'm in the process of applying to the USDA Wood Innovations grants So I'm going to apply to them for funding to do a small kind of pilot operation using a hammer mill. And I'm also going to apply to them for a larger operation using some of this machinery from Europe that produces a higher quality product. So I'm kind of in the difficult position of trying to create a brand new business from nothing with nothing. You know, I don't have $3 million in the bank. And so I'm trying to, you know, raise the funding to do this. And that's a challenge. So my main challenge now is funding. Wood Innovations will pay for a certain amount of things that it doesn't pay for all of the funding for a project. It'll pay for machinery. It doesn't pay for operational costs, et cetera. So we could get into the details of the Wood Innovations grants. But I'm looking for a path to funding to manifest this project. So that's my situation in a nutshell.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff.
That's amazing.
Did you,
Really, yeah.
Jim, did you want to respond to that, or do you have anything?
Well, I would just, that is really concise. And if I were a venture capitalist, I would write you a check right now.
Maybe I should go on Shark Tank.
Maybe
Yeah,
that's what we need to do, is start inviting some venture capitalists to these calls.
you know, it's not out of the realm.
Yeah. Um,
That sounds
just
great.
want to make sure I captured it, Jeff. Did you say you've applied to both CAL FIRE and USDA, but you haven't received or heard yet on either, right? Is that correct?
Correct. I applied this fall to CAL FIRE for funding for a feasibility study.
Yeah.
I applied for it last spring and was not awarded the grant. So I'll find out in December if I've been awarded for the feasibility study. I have consultants lined up to do the feasibility study. And right now I'm in the process of writing grants for Wood Innovations.
Okay, thank you.
So
I'm
you have
guessing,
to
did
say
you have a
that.
lot of grant writing application experience before this?
No,
Good for
but
you.
I don't find it too difficult. I just find it very time consuming.
Yep, it is. Yeah, absolutely. Great, thank you. Does anyone on the call have any questions for Jeff about any of that?
I do, Peter.
Yeah, go ahead, Peter.
So what would be an ideal size of a facility like this, and how much, you know, what type of material would you have to intake to produce the components that go into the potting soil? Like, does it have to be within a specific range of, does it have to be pines? It could be a variety of different trees and forest products. Like we've got, you know, sagebrush, chaparral, things like that, that are also in a component of our clearances where we're doing some clearances.
Yeah, clean conifer chips is basically what I need. Chaparral, sagebrush, that kind of thing, that's not going to work. Municipal waste stream won't work either. So it needs to be clean conifer chips. Here in Plumas County, we've got plenty of or the capacity to produce plenty of clean conifer chips. The size of the facility you asked about, at the hammer mill operation that I want to get going can take place on 3 or 4 acres. I've got a site located where I think I can set up. And with the hammer mill that I've got in mind, I should be able to process about 10,000 tons a year. And I've got several businesses that are interested in the hammer milled product. Several of the larger horticultural mixing operations that that make the kinds of bagged mixes that you see at the nurseries and hardware stores in the springtime when you know, they bring all that stuff out.
And Jeff, can you say why the type only clean conifer chips? Like, what's the reasoning behind that for folks who might not be aware?
Yeah, well, that's what has proven to work, and that's what has been analytically tested. So I sent 6 pallets of wood chips from 5 different species from here to North Carolina State University to Brian Jackson, who is one of the foremost researchers into substrates for horticulture in general. he is testing those now. Wood fiber, so defibered wood, where you take a wood and crush it up and separate the fibers, kind of like when you chew on a toothpick for too long, right? That is what really works well as a substitute for peat moss, because it has to have drainage, aeration, and hydration characteristics. So just any kind of mulch isn't going to work. It has to be very fibrous, has to have long fibers in it. And so conifer wood, specially processed into this long fiber state, is what has proven to be an adequate substitute for peat moss. Now, you can take any material and make mulch, right? But mulch doesn't necessarily work as a potting substrate, because it has to have the drainage, aeration, and hydration characteristics that promote plant growth. So that's what they have narrowed down onto, is coniferous chips, conifer wood, specially processed, as being the best substitute for peat moss.
Great, thank you for that. Peter, does that work from where you are, or what's the materials around where you are?
We have a more complicated scenario. I'm from a college, so we're trying, and CAL FIRE had asked us about doing a biomass facility, and I don't really know if that's in our zone, I'm like, from the educational perspective, are we going to be the ones operating a facility or doing some things like that? But I'm on the Eastern Sierra, most of which, if there's some rangeland with BLM, there's very little extraction. So that's the component that we're looking at, is there's a lot of Western slope businesses and things like that don't mesh with what we have going on the Eastern Sierra, because we have wilderness areas and we have some other things, but we do have some concentrated projects. Plumas Corp, which now in our area is the White Bark Institute, has a 58,000 acre thinning project that they're working on. And that's why we're talking about a biomass facility as a component of an educational opportunity. But I was just kind of interested in terms of what is it that's needed specifically, because it sounds like we're going to be bringing out a bunch of slop. It's not just going to be trees. It's going to be a lot of undergrowth and things like that. So we've been throwing around for 2 years now, what does this even look like to create some sort of biomass outcome of it, other than just mulching stuff. Yeah, because there's char and there's some other components that are coming out, but we're certainly not doing timber products. And we're limited and restricted from being able to do that. So that's not really our approach. So I guess I'll get to more with the introduction thing, I guess, but.
Yeah, and unless, Chris, did you have any questions for Jeff, or we could move to Peter now too?
Yeah, the only thing I was curious, where's the facility at in North Carolina? You said North Carolina State University. Where's the processing facility? I live in North Carolina, so I'm just curious. Thanks.
Yeah, it's at North Carolina State University at Raleigh. Brian Jackson operates the horticultural substrates laboratory there, where they have a hammer mill where they take in samples and process them, such as my samples, and do analytic testing there. So his horticultural substrates laboratory is the largest facility in the country studying substrates in general, not just wood fiber. But Brian Jackson kind of specializes in wood fiber because he sees it as a big part of the future of horticulture.
Is there anyone else actually producing it, or is it just the North Carolina State University? It's just the lab. I'm sorry, I think I got confused about that part. Just the lab.
No,
okay.
There's a company called Profile that's based out of Chicago that has a facility in North Carolina producing a product which they call hydrofiber. So this is completely separate from the university. This is a for-profit business, and they are the largest producer of wood fiber substrate commercially in the United States right now. Their product hydrofiber has been around for 10 years, and it is well respected in the industry, and people use it here in California, but they're paying 2,500 miles of transportation cost to use it here in California. So people in California want a substitute. But if you're in North Carolina and you're looking for wood fiber substrate, hydrofiber is the way to go.
Great. Thanks so much, Jeff. That was really interesting. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Jim, did you have any questions for Jeff, or we move to Peter?
No, I think maybe afterward, let's hear from Peter
Okay.
first. And then I mean, part of my interest in this peer learning group is to hear where people are coming from personally a little bit. Like, I'd be interested to know,
Mm.
Jeff, what you did before. You mentioned, retirement, just some curiosity, just to get to know each other a little bit better. But let's maybe wait to do that kind of conversation after
Okay.
we hear from Peter.
Yeah, great idea. Yeah, thanks for that, Jim.
All right, so I'm up, I guess. Well, I'll mix it in. I've been outdoors person my entire life. Mountain climbing, skiing, also underwater marine sciences and stuff like that has always been like a passion and interest. But I ended up going into law enforcement. I was a double major with chemistry, but I ended up going into law enforcement. And then worked in law enforcement, got injured, came out. Decided I was going to like change the entire trajectory of my whole life and do something totally different. So I went into corporate, worked for a Fortune 50 company doing like asset protection stuff and operational metrics and management and like efficiencies kind of thing. At like operational efficiency czar kind of deal was my title kind of. So then I don't know how I got into that job. It was after my master's degree, I guess. So I hated it in the end. So I ended up getting a job where I'd moved back home in Kern County in Tehachapi. And so I worked for Saracosta Community College because it met my kind of personal desires. And since I had the law enforcement experience and the master's in public admin, which I was more focused on like environmental policy and components like that because of my interest in like citizen science and volunteer armies of going out and doing things. So we did like dive projects with Channel Islands Marine Sanctuary and other things to clean up and also create products out of like discarded fishing nets. So now Patagonia, we would work with Patagonia, which now produces mainstream stuff. Borneo is another company, things like that. So we were the divers that went out that harvested the nets, and then we donated them back to those companies, and then those companies produced product out of them. So whether it was burlap or monofilament or some other construction material of the nets, that's what we did. So I was a technical diver, went down and did that stuff. That was kind of on my own. Then I got this career path option, which was a total long shot. So I came in to teach criminal justice, and then there was a little bit of a personnel shift, if we might say. I wound up in charge of everything all of a sudden, like a year later. So I'm in charge of the public services department. I'm a director, a faculty director, but also like a faculty member. I have a broad swath of autonomy and ability to do different things. So I started with our law enforcement academy and getting that up. Then went over, we did 7 years worth of building the largest prison education program in the nation. So we have a prison college program. I worked at the state with the chancellor's office. We wrote assembly bills, rewrote penal codes, everything like that, so that we could create. We now have 30 colleges inside of 34 different prison facilities, helping about 22,000 prisoners a year going through college with associate's degree transfer pathways and things like that. So structurally, organizationally, faculty members in the community college system get to work at the state level, almost like on release. So I got to work with our academic senate and work on some higher kind of systems level approaches all the way down to the local level. So all of that happened, but my current passion for outdoors, forestry, and some other components sort of married up when I came into contact with some people doing CAL FIRE camps with our prison folks. So we have one in Bishop. And so we started programming there. That led us into opening a wildland fire program last year, and then now building out essentially a multiple degree and stackable certificate pathway that interacts with, I have like a whole diagram of like the vision board, but it interacts with education on multiple fronts. So it's a multi-touch, multi-year program where people would come in at like entry-level wildland firefighting to get an understanding of it, get some industry-level certifications, go out and work for a season, come back and upskill, and then go back out and work into a different environment like dispersed camping or recreation management, and then come back and then upskill into like an associate's where you're managing either fire management for agencies, or you're managing things like outdoor recreation or working in the outdoor industry. that has all come together with sort of this large push towards the direction of what are we going to do about fire prevention, climate change, and everything like that, and the integrated state and federal funding formulas that kind of we get to latch our teeth onto because we're workforce developer essentially. So workforce training provider, I guess. And so in our area, though, we have very few people. So I'm in Tehachapi, and 380 miles north to Topaz at the 395 border with Nevada. That's our area, all the way to the Nevada border. So we have 4 national parks, 3 wilderness areas, and 4 national forests, as well as like millions of acres of rangeland with BLM. So we're trying to figure out, we never had a program that existed before in 50 years of our school existing, which is a darn shame because we missed out on huge opportunities. But a lot of people work in the outdoor industry, but also cross over in this area where they might do seasonal work. And we're trying to work with the agencies. So we have an 18 agency partnership that I'm working with between me and Tehachapi all the way up to Mammoth Lakes, whether it's nonprofits or land trust or conservation corps or something like that. So we're trying to integrate what is like a large scale path towards people could do some of the training online, come in and live in residency. And that's our biggest thing that we have right now is the housing is our biggest issue with the school. So we have a campus in Tehachapi, Ridgecrest, Bishop, and then Mammoth Lakes, and then another one in Kern River Valley, where the Kern River is, Lake Isabella area. So out of those campuses, Bishop seems to be the most likely because it has a regional airport. We can access 350 days a year, those kinds of things. So we're working with some of our partners there to try and create like a training facility there that would incorporate people who are getting deployed out to fires, but then also year-round fire prevention at the lower elevations once the snow starts. So we'd like to look into our pathway right now, like our solid curricular pathway is enter with the wildland firefighting, go on to get forestry, introduction courses, go back out and get field work and get college credit for it, come back and finish off the forestry education and upskill to like crew boss level, firefighter type 2 to type 1. And then you'd have a solid firefighting background and fire management knowledge, at least as it stands. And then have the educational side. So then you can be employed at higher levels other than just entry level. That's a big problem for us too, is like a lot of our positions are seasonal entry level. So they don't produce a living wage for people that live in our area. So we're kind of at the point of trying to manufacture and manifest something that doesn't currently exist, which is we're trying to create partnerships amongst agencies that allow people to be employed year round and upskill over time to continue to earn a livable wage, in addition to somehow providing affordable housing, degree pathways, and all of this. Somehow we wind up as the school being, and me personally being the person that's trying to like create a glue to keep all these things together because these agencies didn't always work together. So we've done some grant applications. We're looking at more grant applications now about what we're going to do. And all of those things are just part of what I do other than go and teach. Like tonight, I got to go and teach class, and run a police academy, but then coming back. So we've hired people to cover some of my other responsibilities. And now this is like an opportunity. So personally, I want a program that my 10 and 13-year-old can go to in 6 years. In 5 years, that's what I want. I want to create a program that I don't have to be in charge of, but structurally is sustainable for our Eastern Sierra partnerships, whether they want to go work in conservation, preservation, whether they want to work on fire prevention and work on prescribed burns and enhancing that kind of relationship. So that's kind of what we're looking at as an industry cluster is what we're calling it, which other people call it that too, but a climate industry cluster. So fire prevention is one component, but also recreation management, policy management, like water management, things like that, and how we're going to manage that on the backside. And in 20 years, if certain 5-letter agencies don't own every single bit of land and every drop of water, then maybe we might be able to progress towards like a little bit more harmony on the Eastern Sierra, and effective sustainable tourism because we have millions of people every year, and things like that. So we kind of want to be the hub, the thought hub that helps get those things forward in our service area. If that's not broad and specific enough, hopefully.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, All right.
Yeah, what an endeavor. Thank you for sharing all of that. That was fascinating. Does anyone have questions first for anyone else before I ask?
Well, I didn't have a specific question, but just a couple of comments. First of all, you're as you said, you're trying to pull together a bunch of different agencies for purposes that they haven't really been geared to work together on in the past, right? Yeah, and I think we're seeing that all over the Sierras, and so I'm glad that you're there doing it. And then the other comment I wanted to make is that it seems like a fair number of people are beginning to look at setting up underburning operations as a business model. So, as I said, I'm a member of the Plumas Underburn Cooperative, which is a volunteer organization. That's fine, but in order to get more work done, it has to be paid for, and it's going to have to be crews that are paid and can get out there and do a lot of work, right? Because volunteers can only do so much. So there are I've seen a certain number of organizations that are looking at doing underburn as a business model, and the basic business model is to apply for grants and then use that grant money to go out there and do underburn. So I would encourage you to look into that and investigate. The Burn Boss. You probably know about the CARC's Burn Boss program. Yeah, and hopefully you can get some businesses started that'll go out there and do that underburn so the forest won't get lost in a forest fire.
Yeah, definitely. That's one of our, if I could put my finger on a problem that we have, is a lot of like, there's grant money right now to be taken. I'm like, should I just leave this job and go start a business doing this? In some senses, because we're lacking the business infrastructure that could exist, or that exists maybe on the western slope, that doesn't exist on the eastern slope to employ people. But we're kind of we're like in a cart and a horse game, where it's like, well, if we have to create people first, like train people to be able to work in a business, but then the business doesn't exist yet. So then we have to train people to create their own business. So we're trying to include like entrepreneurship classes and have somebody from like Janet from White Bark come in and say, hey, this is how the bidding process works. We've got tens of millions of dollars to give out, but we need somebody to actually submit a bid that's functional, that we can actually give them money for. If we have 58,000 acres to be cleared and we can't do more than 25 a year, this now became a millennium long project, so because then there's going to be regrowth and other things like that. So yeah, it's that part that you're talking about. I can only lift so much from my perspective at the school, but we're hoping we could be a conduit for like an accredited institution that's a solid community partner to be able to say, hey, we can write the grant, we can be a fiscal agent, we can pay, like right now I can pay a company to employ 5 people. I can use my own grant funds and give it to a company to employ 5 people full time. So then the next part is like, what land are we doing the project on? And is that land restricted because it's a wilderness, or is it restricted because, XYZ, right? And what the land ownership requirements look like. And that's helpful that you mentioned that, though. I think that's like that thing. To me, it elicits like, yes, another area of something that needs to be worked on. I'm putting it on number 26,000 on the list.
Have you been in contact with any of the local businesses that contract with CAL FIRE and the Forest Service during forest fires, fire suppression businesses? Because what I've seen is that some of these fire suppression businesses are trying to transition also, to underburn, et cetera. And there you've got an established business that is going already, so you can begin to incorporate something new and different into it.
Yeah, we have 2, one of which just kind of fledglingly started. They applied for a CAL FIRE grant, they didn't get it, but we're going to work together a little bit more, because I feel like that's an area where I know grant writing just from my perspective of having done the grants for a lot of other programs. It's not a hurdle for me as much as it is for other people. Like you said, if you have some experience already writing things, just let's go ahead and put the project together and write it. So we're hoping that we can work on that. But those businesses they're just new too. And I'm going to try and get 2 of them to come here to this meeting and see if we can get them more linked up so they can see what other operations are happening. Maybe learn from them. Yeah. I'd love to learn from other people like yours. The biomass facility is why that came up, because it was like, well, if we could get a site where we could train people on site somewhere, you know, and we could do apprenticeships, then they don't have to necessarily employ people who now turn around and make them more profit. They could be employing people for the sake of an apprenticeship program, that kind of thing. Yeah, sorry, I'll stop talking though.
I don't think that wood fiber substrate is going to work for your area. I drove down through 395 to get down to San Diego to go to a trade show, and I was remarking that about the absence of conifers. So yeah, unfortunately, I don't think that's going to be the right one for you.
Peter, I had a question. You may have mentioned this, but it would seem real, and I think this is based on what Jeff was saying in terms of within your universe there and this all these constellations. It seems like it would be so cool to have. So you're obviously working on the workforce piece, but also the business development piece in the same ecosystem, because those seem like they would reinforce each other so well, right? Together.
Yeah, and you know, ideas, nothing that's been put on paper, but ideas are things like, could we use some of our educational grant funding to seed grant like a startup, like $5,000 mini grants to businesses or things like that. But then, I mean, inevitably what ends up happening is we have a unique microcosm, and I know everybody thinks they're unique. I guess I think I'm unique in this. We are unique in this area. Like Jeff said, there isn't this timber production that's ever going to happen. So it's a matter of like what makes this area function and what works well. So we have to expand our scope of what does the term forestry mean for us is quite wide, right? Dispersed camping, trail maintenance, all different kinds of things like that, tourism and everything else that comes along with it. But also, how do we start these businesses up? So I heard about a little mini grant program, and I don't know if we get the red tape for that, but one of the things that happened is, so the SURF funding came out, right? The Economic Relief Fund, but that combined us and the Western Slope. And so every time there's like this opportunity, the uniqueness of our area or the divestment that's happened over 30 years, it's difficult to overcome that issue because whenever the opportunity exists, it gets combined with another opportunity. I know there's work that needs to be done across the Sierras, right? But there's some very distinct differences. And every time this, like the SURF opportunity comes up, we're on this High Road Transition Council and whatever else is going on. We're also working with Alpine County and Sierra County and some other places that have very different needs than we do. And so then that redirects where the funds are because they already have established businesses. And we don't. So we don't have anybody to apply for them. That's part of one of the concerns that I have. Without trying to sound like I'm, raising my fist saying it's unfair. It's just a different need. And I don't know if that need is identified well at the systems level yet.
Yeah, interesting. Just like a follow-up question, in terms of your community college, is there like a business program within there as well?
Yeah, there is. We do. And we have a new business faculty member who's up in the Bishop Mammoth area. So we have an entrepreneur certificate that we just put up. I don't know if a college is the solution to everything. I need them. What it takes is faculty members to do something in a college environment. We could have deans sit on these calls all day long, but the reality is faculty are responsible for like half of the operational get things done at the community college level. So that faculty member is super engaged. I don't know if we can say that there's a conversion rate, which I think is our problem for trying to sell this to somebody, sell it in terms of get enrollment from people. What is the conversion rate between taking this entrepreneurship class and me just having the moxie to go out and start a business? Right? Like, how can I clearly show a value proposition that this time and effort taken to take these courses results in me being able to do a business? That's where I'm when someone asks me, so if I take this class, I'll be able to start a business. Yeah, I started a business too. I have an adventure rental business, but I just did it on my own. So I don't know if our value proposition is there, to the community.
Yeah.
I have taken advantage of an organization called Chico Start, run by a woman in Chico, California. Her name is Eva Shepard, Eva Nicole Shepard. And so her business is a nonprofit for the purpose of helping people get started in small businesses. And she has been doing this for some time and has a lot of knowledge. Has given me a lot of good direction. So I could see students coming out of your community college with a good basic understanding of what it takes to start a business, but then they would probably need help transitioning into, actually doing the business with some kind of the kind of help that Eva offers. So I don't know if there are any accelerator businesses like that in your area. You might talk to Eva and see what she might have to offer.
Yeah, that could be interesting. We have the Small Business Development Center, SBDC, from Sierra Business Council that just started. So we're hoping maybe it will help kind of bridge that gap a little bit. They just hired a full-time person to reside in Bishop for that. But somebody like that would be really great. It'd be good to get their info so that at the very least they could come in and be a presenter in the class, right? And say like, hey, this is what I provide. So if you leave this sequence of courses and you want to go that next step, this is what she does. And that would be really great to have that kind of batch of resources for students that come through.
Yeah, I have an advisor from the SBDC up here, and he's been very helpful as well. So yeah, as much resources as can be available to students as if they're actually determined to try to start a business, as much resources as can bring to them would certainly, increase their chances of being successful.
And Jeff, that makes me think that maybe in sending an invitation to Eva for this group to participate, maybe, either as a presenter one time or to see what folks are needing in that regard in terms of starting small businesses.
I think she'd be willing to do that.
Okay, great. And I know, Peter, you had mentioned too, there's a few folks you were thinking of trying to invite. So we definitely encourage that because this is how we can continue to build and make these cross connections. So please feel free. Yeah.
I will suggest that.
Great. Thank you. And I'll put it in the chat, but you're always welcome to send. We have that Forest Business Alliance website and they can register there and read more about it. I'll get that posted in the chat in just a moment. Does anyone else have questions or comments or other specific requests or anything else? Chris, anything you want to add or share?
No, not right now, but this was a good idea. I like hearing about everyone's experience and adventures. It's really interesting. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It was really great to hear in more detail what people are actually working on and where some of the needs are and the pieces of that. Peter, do you have anything else in terms of specific needs? I know yours is, you've got lots of things going and it's very complex, but just if there's a real priority that you wanted to share for for folks.
I'm trying to think. I was just at a forestry summit, workforce forestry summit. The Good Jobs Challenge thing. The state got a $20 million or something like that. Cal Fire was their grant manager, Justin. You know him probably, maybe Justin.
Yeah.
I can't remember his last name.
Yeah.
So they were there. We were talking about a lot of things. I think something that somebody else said actually from Shasta College, which was interesting because Shasta is known for having sort of their like timber products, and they have an apprenticeship program for the registered forester and some other things like that, was to just really broaden our scope out of, which we are doing collectively, but out of suppression into what are the other ancillary support components, right? So then we also have things like housing. They brought in some housing people, and I thought that was a really interesting conversation. They brought them from a couple of people from Oregon, the Sierra Institute from up north, and a few other people. And then also the tribal inclusion, I think, was another thing I'm working on, but it's difficult. It's difficult in our area. LADWP, they will throw some money at some things, but they are not like an engaged partner. I don't know if that offends anybody on the call. I'm sorry, but they dominate everything in our area, which makes it and suppress a lot of things. So, like for instance, resource conservation districts are huge, right? We have like 104 in the state or something, and maybe 30% of them are absolutely defunct because of things like water districts that are owned by corporations. And the Mono Inyo Resource Conservation District is essentially like dead in the water. It doesn't have people to be able to source funds to do that because the area and the riparian environments and things like that are all dominant. Where most of the conservation would happen in our area is dominated by an industry and a literal corporation who owns the land. And things like that. So I think that's an interesting thing to broaden the scope of where the conversation is happening. When I went to this workforce summit, we did a field trip with CAL FIRE where we went to a prescribed burn site, a treatment site for thinning, and one other site that was also just another thinning site. But they hubbed money through the Resource Conservation District, worked with the college, employed the students, and were able to get like 50 people on site to treat 400 acres. And thinned it out and it was a really remarkable kind of partnership kind of thing. In my mind, I struggle with that because there's some dominating people at a systems or policy level where things just work in their direction. And they work in their direction because they have been constructed to work in their direction. So we also have to work on some deconstruction and trying to get the tribal group on our side with that versus them thinking that we're just another group that's trying to step in and take stuff from them. I think that's a hard trust building process we have to go through. And for me, it comes from a transparent place of the college and saying, we've kind of failed in this area for 50 years of not having a program like this that could have been developed well, but will you come and teach part of our class for us? Will you come and teach 3 weeks? Can we pay you? Can we respect your traditional ecological knowledge and your rights to the land? And by doing that, maybe we can build a better coalition that can work to influence some of these bigger corporations. So also have to work on a social level that's outside of like, just writing some curriculum.
Okay, there's a lot there, but thank you for that. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
No, it's good. It's just I can see the complex nature of the work and what you're doing. So I appreciate that for sure. Yeah. Jim, do you have anything else to add or other questions?
No, I think for us, the challenge, I think just hearing Peter and Jeff, what kinds of things you might hope for from this group seem pretty, slightly different. So I think that's our idea behind the work groups. And I think in your case, Jeff, we have folks that are in the very practical stages of developing an operation, right? And I think that's one set of needs. And then Peter has another set of needs that are broader and longer term. And so we want to make sure we structure this so that we can help both of you.
Yeah.
So that's our goal. And we have some good, like a speaker for December, I think
we have at least one person set up. Yeah.
The Sierra Business Council. He's been the head of that for a long time. So you might find him interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you both, Peter and Jeff, could share, like I said, share this with others, and the dates are already set. It's going to be the third Tuesday of the month, so they can plan ahead for that. That's all on the website. So it'd be great to share that with others, and then we can start to kind of get some other input as well. Does anyone else have anything else you'd like to cover today? Questions for us? Any other pieces? We're at about an hour, but we had booked up to 2 hours, so we're available. Just want to also respect your time. And
I'm curious to hear from Christopher.
Chris.
Hi, yeah, sorry for all the noise. I'm driving actually at the moment. And there's a rain out. Yeah, my name is Christopher. My last name is Saka. You can probably see it on the screen. I'm actually part of the Forest Business Alliance team. And I have been leading up the support that we've been providing around CAL FIRE proposal development and budgeting. So we've created a bunch of templates and provided some one-on-one support to people applying for the CAL FIRE grants over the last 2 cycles. So that's my role in the FBA team, Forest Business Alliance team. And now I'm kind of on the periphery of the peer learning network, and I'm just joining these calls to sort of stay tuned into what you guys are working on, and in the hopes that I can offer some support at some point. Professionally, again, a little background, I've been working for nonprofits most of my career. I co-founded a nonprofit, which I ran for about 15 years until about a year ago. And now I'm just, in addition to being part of the FBA team, I do consulting with mostly international nonprofits around conservation and sustainable development. Yeah, that's where I am in a nutshell. Happy to answer any questions. Thanks.
We have a recording of one of your workshops, right, Chris, on our website about budgeting and can you remind me what that was about?
Yeah, there's a recording on there about project design. We did a workshop, and there's another recording on there about budgeting specifically for CAL FIRE project. And the templates that we developed, they're Excel-based templates, and then there's an accompanying guidance document, which is quite detailed, which hopefully helps people get through the CAL FIRE proposal process as painlessly as possible. It can be a little confusing if you're new to the CAL FIRE opportunities. So, and we update those templates and guidelines for every new cycle because things change. So we've done 2 updates now. So yeah, but those are the templates as well as the recordings of the workshops should be available on the website.
That's fantastic.
Yep.
Do you
Thanks,
have
Chris.
the deadline? Do you know the deadline, Chris, for the next round? Is it March 31st of 2024?
I don't know it off the top of my head, but we just had one month or a little over a month ago. I don't know the deadline for the next one.
All right.
I could find out though and share it with everyone. I don't know it off the top of my head.
Right. I think last year it was that. I think it was that time.
And I would actually, Albert, Jim, I'd say one other thing, just in terms of support we provide, through the FBA. We won't write grants or do budgets for people, but we are available. Carrie and I have been available to people when they have specific questions or run into obstacles. We've been available to a number of grant seekers to help them work through real specific things. And so that's always, for anyone who is applying for CAL FIRE grant funding in this next cycle, happy to work with people a little bit, as early as possible in that process if you decide you're going to go after funding for CAL FIRE. So.
Yeah, thanks for that reminder, Chris. Yeah.
Sure.
Did you have anything else, Jim? Oh, go ahead.
That cycle? When is that cycle, Chris?
Like I said, I'm not exact. I can find out. It's usually, so we've been through 2 cycles now. I think Jim might be right. I think it's March. It's next year, but I'm not sure exactly when the deadline is. But we can find out and let people know in the notes to this call, or just circulate the date to people. But I can't. I'd look it up for you right now, but I'm in the car. So, but it's not right away. So you have some time, but it does take a while to develop the proposal, and it is quite it's not your typical it's different than a lot of the, I'd say, the, if you're used to writing grants for USDA or other people, it's going to be quite different than those processes. So it's worth looking at the guidance documents in previous cycles pretty far ahead of time, so you know what you're in for. Over.
Okay, thanks.
Great. Thanks, Chris. Anyone else have any questions or comments or anything else you want to share?
Just
Okay.
that I don't know very much about you, Kathleen, or you, Jim. So if you would give yourselves brief introductions, I'd appreciate that.
Sure. Thank you for asking. Good point. Jim, you want to start?
Yeah, so I've known Vance for a long time, and the thing he brought me in on this was to help with the peer learning network, and also the workforce questions specifically around, well, yeah, mostly around the Hispanic community, because I've done a lot of work. I had a career in Latin America, and then up in here in Oregon, I've worked with the Latino community in the state for the last 14 years or so. So what I'm doing is outreach towards the land use, the land-based kind of Hispanic Latino workforce in California, and making them aware of this grant fund, and telling them about the priorities in workforce. And I've had quite a bit of interest with the groups I've talked to, and farm worker groups and other industries that employ a lot of Latinos there. This is a growth area, I think, for certain folks that can broaden their skill set and move into forestry and thinning and management. And so that's kind of my slice of this, or my interest in this area.
Thanks, Jim.
Yeah.
And my background, and we kind of looked at Vance as like he's the hub of this, and he kind of was the one who spearheaded the effort to get this Forest Business Alliance funded, and with input and support from many people. But my part of is that I worked with Vance and with the National Forest Foundation for almost 5 years, and in that time worked with several forest collaboratives, and was both facilitator and participant in different ones across the Northwest. I'm actually based in Washington State, and I was the regional director up here for Oregon, Washington, and Alaska. And so I'm here to help support the online meeting facilitation and engagement, and both in the monthly the webinars that we had, and then this peer learning network. And so helping to support, how do we engage people in these virtual meetings, and also facilitating, if we have in the future, in-person meetings, and getting agendas to folks and supporting that regard. So that's my primary role in this right now, working closely with Jim and Vance in this peer learning network piece. Yeah.
Well, and one other piece that I brought, I mean, I worked for a grant making foundation for 17 years. So familiarity with the grant making process, I think
Yeah.
helping.
Likewise, I have like 20 years of nonprofit experience, and as soon as you stick around long enough, they always want you to do some fundraising. So that was what mostly I got pulled into a lot towards, halfway through, which also took me out of the field. So I appreciate Peter's comments on that earlier. It was a tough choice. Yeah. So, and I definitely understand the nature of that element of the grant application piece. It's quite an endeavor. Yeah. That's just a little bit in a nutshell of Kathleen and Jim. All right. Anything else then? And if not, we can go ahead and conclude.
I was curious about, Jeff, what was your career prior to landowner?
I was a building inspector down in Silicon Valley for 15 years. Before that, I did a variety of things, draftsman. I was a journalist for a while, woodworking, etc. But building inspector for 15 years.
Yeah.
Nice.
Cool.
Well, thank you all for coming and for sharing and being so engaged and supportive in terms of sharing what you're doing and where there might be opportunities for support. And it was really remarkable to hear what you are up to and what's happening. So thank you again as well for mentioning this to the other folks that you had in mind, and hopefully the December meeting they'll be able to attend. That is on the website if they want to register already, and it's set up as a recurring meeting now so that people can plan ahead for that. And if you have any questions, the contact info on the Forest Business Alliance is available, and specific support, as Chris mentioned, they are available for support with the grant application process and technical questions, and then also trying to support getting information and cross connection across different entities and businesses. So please do reach out and let us know what you need. And we will look forward to seeing you. We'll upload this recording to the website, though, for everyone who couldn't make it today, or if you want to watch a part of it again. And then we'll send out a reminder in a couple weeks about the December meeting, which is December 19th. That's third Tuesday at noon Pacific time. So
Thank
with
you.
that, we'll officially conclude, and thank you all.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Thank you very
Thanks,
much.